Hello and welcome to another Healthy Bite. My name is Dr. Ron Early. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Well, this week we explored positivity in the workplace in particular. We explored the themes of burnout and what we could do about it, what some of the symptoms are of them and what we can do about it. And we did that with the wonderful Dr. Susie Green from the Positivity Institute. Now, Susie has been a guest on our podcast before, and I love getting some of my guests back to keep in touch with them, keep up to date with them, and get them to share what is their latest, what they are working on. And this week we are focusing on burnout and engagement. And Susie references the work of Professor Martin Seligman, which I also reference in my book, Life Less Stressed, The 5 Pillars of Health and Wellness. And in the chapter on think or thought, I talk about the PERMA model. And the PERMA model stands for PERMA. P standing for positivity, E for engagement, R for relationships, M for meaning, and A for acknowledgement or accomplishment. And actually, we discuss how Marty Seligman, as Susie calls him, or Professor Seligman, as I probably would, has added another letter to that PERMA model, and it is the letter H. Well, she told me it was also V, H standing for health and V for vitality, because he recognized that unless a person was healthy, that it was very difficult to be positive, engaged, form relationships, find meaning and accomplishment. It's much easier if you are healthy. In fact, that's the purpose of our Unstress podcast and our Unstress Health community and programs, is to provide you with information to help you take control of your health, fulfill your potential and be the best you can be. But back to the PERMA model, and what we're really exploring is also burnout in the corporate space, and the fact that the current period of time is being referred to as the Great Resignation. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is the last 2 years have been a period of global reflection, and with a dramatic change to our work environment. Literally overnight, from the lockdown, we were told to stay home. So for many people, that meant long commutes of up to an hour or more each way in a day, which over a 5-day working week adds up to a whole day of traveling to and from work, is a huge price that people pay. And so this was an opportunity to not only free up time, but free up space for thinking about what was important and what was meaningful in life, how engaged you were with your job, what the meaning of your job was, how important relationships are. It's interesting to focus on the relationship side of things, because we definitely do know that relationships are important. And I think that's one of the lessons that we've learned from from this period, and that is the importance of real relationships, face-to-face relationships. It's great that we can communicate with people all around the world, but nothing quite beats being in the same room, being able to interact, being able to see facial expressions, body language, to reach out and shake someone's hand. Yes, I know that's a terribly dangerous activity, but there's something quite nice about it. Or give them a hug or give them a kiss. But there's something about connection with other human beings. Well, arguably, it's what's made our species, Homo sapiens, the successful species that we are. Our ability to interact, co-regulate, and cooperate, and do that in person has been a measure of our success as a species. So relationships has been something that perhaps we've recognized, we definitely have recognized how important that is. And so our new work environment involves a balance between the time we save in commuting and the convenience and legitimacy of working from home. And that raises all sorts of challenges, because it assumes that you have a comfortable work environment at home, that you have adequate a desk and chair to sit on, ergonomically comfortable, that you have a good computer screen or screens and good internet connection. It makes all sorts of assumptions. But assuming you do, the importance of returning to the office and connecting with the team or your co-workers is also really important. And yet finding that balance in this new work-life experience that we're being offered. I mean, there are many challenges, but there are many opportunities. And the excitement, if you like, or the novelty, or the importance of spending time in the same room with your team, with your co-workers, is potentially a really positive thing as well. So the interesting thing, though, is that this is being described as the Great Resignation. And it's interesting to go to the work from the Gallup organization, which I know many years ago, there was a survey that they did on employment engagement, which I think from memory was something like 13% of workforce were disengaged. Well, no, I think it was something like 13% of the workforce were engaged in their work. They were really engaged in their work. 65% of the workforce were a little indifferent. I mean, they did the job. They didn't see there was great meaning in the job that they did, but they did it because it was their income. So that's 65% plus 13%. I think we're up to about 65 and 13 is about 78%. And the rest were actively disengaged or from their work, actively disengaged from their work, which kind of suggests that about 87% of the workforce are either indifferent or disengaged from their work, which is sobering. So that has now led to what is referred to as a period we're now currently in called the Great Resignation, which is actually the Great Disconnect, because people are realizing and reflecting on their work experience. Now, there's some interesting statistics, and I'm referencing here the Gallup organization, and they cover a story here, which the highlights of which are a job change is on the mind of nearly half of all US employees. Now, I don't think that would be very different in Australia as well. Employee engagement correlates strongly to employee retention. Now is the time, this is Gallup offering this advice to corporations, now is the time to rethink your employee retention strategy. Well, it's interesting because our Unstress Health platform is actually in the new year going to be targeting the corporate world in Australia, in the UK and in America, because we believe our more holistic approach to stress and building resilience is a great way of providing an ongoing corporate wellness program. So often corporate wellness programs are really window dressings. You get a health checkup once a year. You might get free flu vaccines. There might be a massage. You might have a bowl of fruit. There might be the occasional health talk. But what Unstress Health is going to be looking at is actually providing an ongoing community engagement. But it's interesting to reflect on this disengagement that's going on. A new Gallup analysis finds that 48% of America's working population is actively job searching or watching for opportunities. Busy businesses are facing a staggeringly high quit rate. In fact, in America, 3.6 million Americans resigned in May 2022 alone, a record high number of unfilled positions because of, and this is certainly true in Australia, because of our lockdown and the fact that we don't have overseas workers on short-term working holiday visas or tourists or students or backpackers, as we call them. The unemployment rate in Australia and in America is very low, and almost everywhere is advertising for workers. So there are some real issues here about engagement and the impact that has on a company. And it's not just absenteeism, which was always been a problem and an easy thing to measure, but it's presenteeism as well, which is you showing up to work but not really being present. Now, a study in Australia about 2 or 3 years ago estimated that the cost of presenteeism to Australian industry conservatively is around $44 billion a year. And that doesn't even take into account then staff turnover, because the cost of staff turnover is huge in lost human capital and the cost of retraining. So something really needs to change, and Gallup's advice is now is the time to rethink your employee retention strategy, and to do that in a very proactive way. People are calling it the Great Resignation, as the Gallup data show. It is less an industry role or pay issue than it is a workplace issue. So it's not so much the industry or how much pay an individual is getting, but it's the workplace environment that the employer is creating. Low engagement teams typically have turnover rates that are between 18 and 43% higher than highly engaged teams. And that's a really important thing. Gallup finds that it takes more than a 20% pay rise to lure most employees away from a manager who engages them, and next to nothing to poach most disengaged workers. So if you're working in an engaged environment where the employee is focused on the health of their team, and as I've often said, a company that focuses on the health of their team is a company that people will want to work for, and also a company that people will want to work with. So it's a whole issue that cuts right across. And interestingly, we talk about so much of that in this episode with Susie Green this week, exploring what burnout actually means, and disengagement from your work is a major part of it. So about finding that balance and about incorporating the PERMA model into an assessment of people's mental and physical health within the work environment. And that's why a more holistic focus on health is so important, because it's one thing to say you need to have a more positive attitude to health, you need to be more to work, you need to be more engaged, etc. But if you're not sleeping well, you're not breathing well, then that puts you behind the eight ball right from the word go. And when you consider also that mood and food are intimately connected, then you start to build a picture of how the stresses that we're exposed to and the pillars of health that we're not exposed to combine to create a very disengaged workforce that has other priorities. And it's a company that is actually focused on this in a proactive way, that is really companies that people want to seek out and work with and form long and ongoing and meaningful relationships with. Look, it's always a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful experience to talk to Susie Green, and like our discussions about sleep and breathe, and when we revisit with our cardiologist, Dr. Ross Walker, or our meditation and yoga and psychotherapist, Dr. Shankadev Saraswati, it's great to reconnect with the Positivity Institute and tap that hoop along and remind us that this is something we should all be striving for. It was a great episode. It's well worth having a listen to. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.